welcome to the show. I hope all of you guys are enjoying Salt Flats 2021 out there, which I now believe is Alberta's largest esports event in history. Pat on our back, you know what I mean? Sometimes I think the power of gamers is just too much to handle. Anyways, you're now listening to AESA Insight with me, Thai Sirikoone, your host for the next hour and a half. If you choose to stick with us, hope you do. It's going to be a fun time. Look at all these beautiful faces we got in the panel today. Big 5-banger. And you know what? Hey, every time I attend a Salt Flats event or a Salt Mines event, or like any local tournament, maybe just like a weekly or even local game discords, it always amazes me how awesome every community in Alberta is. And I think just like traditional sports, esports and competitive communities have been like spawned out of a wide variety of really cool and different people with different backgrounds, interests, and perspectives on life and stuff. So, good people, a lot of homies here in Alberta. If there's any game that you have an interest in, I think in Alberta, there's probably a local community for it, or there's space for you to kind of etch out a place for yourself and your game and your community, right? Like multiplayer games now, more than ever, are as wide-reaching as anyone's interest can be. But today, we're going to focus on two of those communities. One of Alberta's best-named communities, the Alberta Squid Swamp, is here, or also known as ASS, also known as ASS.
Yep.
I assume that's how you pronounce it. They hold monthly and weekly Splatoon events that keep a game that I personally think is an outstanding achievement in arena shooting innovation. They're keeping it alive and well. So with me today from the Alberta Squid Swamp are Ryan, a.k.a. Yoko, Andrew, a.k.a. Takuno.
Howdy, everyone.
Hey, guys. Just quick, before we get on to the other two guests, happy belated birthday, Andrew.
Thanks so much. I have gotten older, and the world recognized it, so that's cool.
So I don't know how many people are out there, but you just got a birthday shout-out in front of all these folks. What's up?
Hey. Thanks, everyone.
So another game that most definitely needs to stay alive is an all-time classic, and what some would argue is the best fighting game ever made. I'm arguing it, even though I got it. Street Fighter 3 Third Strike is a fan favorite of the series, and Alberta's very own Third Strike Academy is dedicated to playing and learning one of the most legendary fighting games ever put to code. Committed to designing a supportive and fun fighting game environment, and joining me today from the Third Strike Academy are Jamie the Rat King and Mr. Kyle. How you guys doing?
Yeah, how's it going?
Happy Valentine's Day, guys. There's no one else in the world I'd rather spend it with, and I'm glad you guys are all here.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, that was a good intro, right? That was hype.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
You'll find yourself, you'll find yourself a heart-shaped steak in the mail for you coming, because show my love and appreciation.
Yeah, just before we got in the show, Takuno was talking about how he's giving his heart away for the Splatoon tournament, which... So, hey, if you're a part of that, something to look forward to, something to fight it out for. That's a big prize.
Yeah, the ultimate prize.
Yeah.
Well, the only clause is you get it when I'm done using it, so you might have to wait a little bit. Who knows, maybe 2 to 5 years.
They got to outlast.
We get it. You get it when I'm done using it.
Oh, right. Yeah, my bad.
Yeah, you know what? My heart is here to share for everyone. Whoever wants a piece of it, it's big enough for y'all. Let's jump into some questions. Why don't we? I like to think that everyone is open and welcome to answer each other's questions. If you guys got a good point, just kind of jump in. We got 5 people, so let's try not to talk over each other too much. I've been in enough Discords, and I'm sure you guys have been in enough Discord calls to know that it's hard to figure out what people are saying. There's like 5 people who are like, yo. So, but my first question today on this edition of AESA Insight here on Valentine's Day is for ASS, or the Alberta Squid Swamp. The Splatoon's esport community, it's like not the first thing that you think of when you think esports, right? At least not what, the mainstream media might think of. when you say the word esport. But you guys seem like super genuine, super passionate, and in a lot of ways very different from shooter communities, like shooter esports communities. And I was just wondering, like, do you guys consider yourself a subsection of like shooters as a category of games and esports?
I think it's a good way to get people into the game who don't really understand what Splatoon is to say, well, yeah, it's a third-person team-based shooter. But I think that's about where the similarities end, especially as far as the communities. The kinds of people we have in the Splatoon community, I feel are just incredibly diverse and really wholesome and just want to see everybody do their best. And I really like that about the health. And so I don't think that the kinds of people in the community have a lot of overlap with the kinds of people you'd find in typical shooter communities from my experience.
Yeah, I would say that there is still some overlap because we have a few people in our community that did come from Overwatch and Counter-Strike and things like that, and there are skills that carry over between the two, but I don't know. I honestly haven't spent much time in those other communities to know how similar or different we are. So all I know is that, you know, there is some overlap, and people coming from those shooters, if you like the bright, colorful action, give it a shot and see if it's for you.
Yeah, I don't know. Is Splatoon like a shooter? I was trying to figure that out when I got into Splatoon in a big way when Splatoon 2 came out, because it felt like I was playing a shooter, but it also felt like I was playing, you know, one of those weird genre-less Nintendo games, right? Do you guys play any other shooters?
So I don't play a lot of other shooters myself personally. And even in Splatoon, if anyone's seen me play, I don't play any of the guns that actually shoot. So my weapons of choice tend to be brushes and rollers, which are like not weapons you'd find in any other kind of shooter game. So it's it's unique. There's similarities, but there's also a ton of differences. I think the biggest thing for that other shooter games don't have is that notion of turf control or map control. So anytime you put down your ink, like you shoot ink on the map, you're giving yourself advantage for healing yourself, for stealth, because you can swim and be basically invisible in your own ink, for movement, because you can go so much faster in your own ink and you basically can't move in opponent's ink. So it becomes a lot more of this strategy of controlling the map and using your shooters to attain that objective.
Yeah, that's a pretty unique thing about that game. Like, it's both attractive as like a newcomer, and it has a lot of staying power in the mechanic of, you know, if you aren't really good at shooting other guys and getting a lot of kills racked up or whatever, you can just kind of sit back and help your team out passively by covering the map and, you know, helping them take control of that, which is super fun. So let's get to the third strike folk over here waiting patiently. Look at these guys. You guys seem so chill and tight on your streams, man. I tuned in a little bit last night on your guys'. Was that a tournament, the round robin thing?
Last night?
Yeah. What was that?
Last night was the Salt Flats tournament for us.
Right. I just tuned in for a bit because I was doing some aim lab stuff, so I didn't get to watch too much. But you guys just seem so cool. Like, you guys give Third Strike an added layer of kind of like, yeah, it's just a bunch of cool guys playing a cool fighting game over there. Like, I don't know if I can go talk to them.
Definitely the hipster Street Fighter. We just didn't want to move on to the new ones. We liked our game.
Yeah. Like, how do you guys view your community? I know it's pretty relatively small compared to other fighting games out there. So how do you guys approach it at a local level?
You want to take this, Kyle, or I can give some thoughts?
Sure. I mean, I guess maybe do you want to, like, more specifically, what do you mean? How do we approach it?
Well, just like, okay, you're logging on, you know, is it a group of friends, or is it kind of something a little more serious? Is it a little more, you know, teaching people how to play? Or
Yeah, I mean, it kind of started organically. We're pretty grassroots in how we do everything, basically. It started off as like I used to compete in like the general fighting game scene here, and then I stepped away from that for a little bit, and then I created this group called Third Strike Academy. It was basically just inviting my friends who wanted to play, and there was like 5 of us. And then people kept trickling in and trickling in and trickling in, and we started taking parts of it a little bit more seriously and like organizing the channels and creating roles and stuff. So it's all just been sort of an organic process. But the one thing that's been kind of strange is a lot of this has happened in COVID, right? And Third Strike is just, I don't know, it's like when you play it in person, it's the kind of game that generates hype. Like even at a like low level, at an intermediate level, there's something about this game. It's constantly just generating like a spectacle for everyone to see. And when you have like live like gatherings, it has like this aura, like it pulls people in. Like there's all these fighting games going on, and when we would play like offline, people would just come over. They want to see what's going on. Like, why is it so hype? And so obviously now that we're online, we're kind of isolated. We don't have that same feeling at the moment. So that part is kind of missing for me right now. But I don't know what Jamie thinks about it.
Yeah, I guess to talk on that point about why it's kind of blowing up in the pandemic so much is fighting games kind of have a big problem across the whole genre of netcode. It's like kind of been a really big issue for as long as fighting games have been around. Like I remember there was this triangle that was like good gameplay, good netcode, and a live community. And I feel like Third Strike is the only one, like one of the few games that has all three. Because like I can always find games and there's always people to talk to. Like it's alive enough for us to like be able to enjoy it at any time. There's always someone to play with. So I feel like that's kind of why it's been blowing up over the pandemic. It's because there isn't really many alternatives. Like a lot of the guys that are playing in our Discord right now, they have other games as their kind of like main game, but it's hard to enjoy their main game when they can't go over to their friend's house to play it. But Third Strike kind of has the really good netcode through the freeware Fightcade that to play for free, which is just incredible, and just like enjoy games and have awesome nights sharing laughs with each other, just like last night. It's lots of fun.
Yeah, it's always fun watching you guys play, and I like your little jabs you always take at each other. But for Third Strike, it has a similar position as a lot of other beloved fighting games in that they're old. You know what I mean? Like they're old arcade games. They come from a certain era, and they don't get like as much publicity or marketing as newer fighting games, obviously, right? So how do you guys nurture that community and grow that community when it is an older game that might not on its face look as appealing as a newer game?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. The old game thing comes with a bunch of problems usually, right? Or not problems, but obstacles, let's call it. So one of those obstacles is like what platforms does it play on? So like I know like the Melee players are lugging around CRTs in their trunks and things like that. So that's like an added difficulty for them. Luckily, Third Strike, it's not an issue for Third Strike. Third Strike is basically on every platform that's on Switch, PS3, PS4, of course, the 2 or 3 versions on PC. So it's everywhere. The downside of that is that it kind of splits the online community a little bit. There's like a Xbox like crowd of people that play and a PlayStation crowd. Fightcade's the biggest. There's always like 300-ish people playing online at a time, kind of thing. So that's not so bad for us. But then I think the other difficulty of an old game is, I mean, there's people will say like, why would I learn like a dead game, right? I remember having this conversation multiple times.
Yep.
And I guess it depends like what do you mean by a dead game? Like if you're trying to compete for like big money and big tournaments, then yeah, you probably shouldn't play Third Strike, obviously, right? Even though there still are like big tournaments at the highest level, especially in Japan and places like that. But there's not going to be as many. There's not going to be one every weekend or things like that. But in terms of like a dead game, I mean, there's a community here. There's a really big community that's always playing online. It's not like a game where you have to go into a Discord and like ask for matches. Like there's all these platforms you just log into and play. So it's not really like dead in that kind of way, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess that's my answer to
that. Yeah. So this is kind of a question for the Splatoon community too, is that you guys are also in this really cool position where you get to have more fun with it because you're more of a niche community compared to like I said at the beginning, the big mainstream esport type games, right? Like compared to Valorant or Smash Ultimate, the community just it doesn't show up maybe as much. I'm not an expert in Splatoon community, obviously as much as you guys are. But what is it like? Having that cool, really niche, tight community and building that and growing it, and like I said to the other guys, nurturing a community like that.
I am all here for that nurturing of the small community. Before I was running the Alberta Squid Swamp, I was helping. I was one of the admins running the Odafest Pokemon League, which was once again a local group centered around a single game, and just the fun you can have with just like a small group of people you can see in person, and just have a common theme, like a common game to play with, it's pretty special, I think, because in adulthood, it's very difficult to go out and make new friends. But if you have like a common place to go to play a certain thing and, have this thing in common with a group of people, it's a lot easier to make like more meaningful connections with people. Like, not to say you can't do that with like bigger Discord servers or fighting communities, but it's much easier when it's a smaller group of people and you see the same few people showing up in chat all the time. So that's what I really like about it, and because of that tight knit group, we can have mini games we play in game, just using the game mechanics, and also drinking nights and things like that, movie nights, that kind of thing. So we definitely have our fair share of fun with it, and branch out aside from just having game nights.
And on the larger side as well, if we think about, for example, the Smash Ultimate community, the skill ceiling in something like Smash Ultimate with the player base that it has is insane. And if you're a new player wanting to get into Smash, and you see where you're at, and you see where the skill ceiling is at, and just the amount of players you have to get through to even make a dent in the scene, it is really intimidating. And in the Splatoon scene, I feel because it is a team-based game, there is, and we were talking a little bit earlier, like even if you can't hit your shots perfectly, you can still support your team by like painting the map and being like a supportive player. There is such a more inclusive world for competitive players. And so like I've gone out to some of the like world tournaments for Splatoon and have played against some of the like the top people who play on Nintendo's stages, and I've gotten to meet them and hang out with them, and everybody is really cool and just really they're just fun and great people who care about the community. And in a lot of other games, like the top players are seen almost as like untouchables or as like gods that if you get queued up in a match against, that you just have no hope. But in something like
Melee, they literally call them gods.
yeah, literally, right? But in something like Splatoon, you can go on the online solo queue, get matched against another player who like, oh yeah, I know that player. That's like a top player in the world. And you can still hold your own, or you can still like have a win against that player because it's not you versus them, but it's your team versus their team. Yeah. And so I think that really helps shape the community and the skill for Splatoon, that if you're a new player and you want to get into that high level gameplay, it is not inaccessible. You just have to have the right community and the right team to help support you and your needs and to let you kind of grow and develop in the way you need to.
Yeah. So I want to kind of touch on what Andrew said about kind of doing a little bit more with your community. Like you said, having movie nights and just being able to chat and make friends and stuff. I've really, really appreciated being in a bunch of Discords over quarantine and being able to just jump in and be like, hey, what's up, everyone? Like, how's everyone's day? And I've met so many new friends that I think I have like a good special relationship with now that I've never shaken their hands. You know what I mean? And that's a really cool thing that's possible through video games and through esports and stuff. Because not only do you get to compete together and learn and kind of challenge yourself, it's everyone's doing that, right? So there's that camaraderie that gets built up. And then to your point, Ryan, about having the team game dynamic versus the 1v1, I am always so fascinated by that difference of competition. Actually, I'd like to open this up to all you guys, and just what is your perspective on the team dynamic and the dynamic? So this is literally the most Street Fighter versus the most team-based game, you know? Because I find it really funny because I play a lot of FPS games that like it's so immediate when people blame their team when they lose, you know? So immediate. Same with like a League of Legends or a Dota. It's like, yeah, if you losing, yeah, F this guy, he doesn't know what he's doing, he's just a joke. There's this new term now I'm discovering just called gap, which is what someone says to you when there's a skill gap. Like, damn, that's pretty rude. Like, what if you suck, you know? And that's where I find fighting games very interesting, because it's, you have to take it, right? If you lose, that's on you, and no one can say otherwise, including yourself, right? So yeah, like what do you guys think about just the idea of taking a loss when it comes to individual and team games?
Well, if you're gonna take a loss and blame your team, you also got to be able to take the win and like support your team from that. Like, it wasn't your win, it was the team's win, and you contributed to it. And it's not your loss, it's the team's loss. Sure, you can blame your teammates. I've done that plenty of times myself. But like, you've got to be able to accept that it was your teammates and yourself as a whole unit for both the win and the loss.
Yeah, you hear that, everyone out there? Take notes on what Ryan's got to say. Stop blaming your team, man.
But like, something I try and do when I'm playing like a solo game is just a training strategy. I think, how can I not like win the objective or get the most kills, but how can I pick out a specific player that I want to support? Like, I'm going to be their back support, and I'm going to make sure that they always have like resources available to them. I'm going to make sure that they, like, if somebody's approaching them and they don't see it, that I take out that player that's like aiming for that teammate. So if you like can focus on team games where rather than trying to outplay the other opponent, you're trying to help support your team, it really does shift the dynamic in strategy. And I think there's a lot more depth to be had in that sort of dynamic strategy, rather than just focusing on like the specific 1v1 skill ceiling or the gap of skill between you and another technical player, right?
Yeah, that's really well put. I like your idea of not focusing, let's say, on like one enemy to beat, but one teammate to boost up. That's super valuable, and I think a lot of team games you could just win out if more people had that mentality.
Yeah, I think it's actually a really interesting topic, because I think the 1v1 aspect is like a really big reason that fighting games are so niche, is
Mhm.
because a lot of people, when they first start out, like they just kind of have a perspective where winning and losing like means everything. It's like if they're losing, they're just like not enjoying the game at all. And like
Yeah.
one of the things that makes team games so accessible is you can play with your friends. Like you can have a really good teammate that's like a friend of yours, and it's really easy to get into the game that way because you're playing together as a team and they can carry you and they can teach you along the way too. So I think one of the things like to push fighting games forward as a genre, like there needs to be better lobby systems and like kind of a change in perspective that winning doesn't really mean everything. Like fighting games are about enjoying the game and like doing some having hype moments, and like there just needs to be, I'm not really sure what the way to go about it is, but just like a way to change the perspective that winning means so much, because it really
Yeah.
doesn't. I mean, like, there's not a lot of money on the line. Like this Third Strike is almost as old as I am. It's a really old game. It's very niche community, like very tight knit. Like winning doesn't really matter. We're just here to have a good time. But for some reason, people that are new to the genre, they don't really see it that way. So I'm not
Yeah.
sure how to go about solving that, but it's definitely something to consider.
Yeah, it could be super intimidating, but for me, I'm really interested in like self growth and stuff like that. And I've really been enjoying learning and getting better at fighting games because it's such a great opportunity to self-reflect and kind of understand your shortcomings, right? And you can build that out into a big life philosophy if you want to, or not. But just as a an athlete would have the same mentality, right? And I think it's a really strong mindset to learn how to have, right? And fighting games give that to you so immediately.
I think that's actually something that we try to do in our group, especially. I think it was it Takuno talking about skill ceiling earlier?
Yoko.
Sorry, Yoko.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Third Strike's skill ceiling is like to infinity, basically. You know, there's people who've been playing 20 years and they're still getting better and coming up with new tech. Intimidating for new players, right? And then they come in and then fight someone like me who's got like 7 years or whatever it is experience now. So in our group, we do. I guess it's also a strength to playing this game. It's like there isn't really egos. We don't really care. It's like we're playing to have fun, right? And we do these little crew battles all the time, and we stole like a stock system from Smash for that, so that you could be on a team and you could still contribute, even if you didn't win a match. If you win rounds, you still feel like you're contributing to your team. And then Jamie runs like a league system, and we have like basically experience brackets. So if you're like a newer player, you can play with other new players. And we've also been talking about doing like a coaching system where we'll pair up like a new player with a coach, and then the coach just sort of like trains them and teaches them and guides them, and then we have like tournaments and things like that. So yeah, we just run like all kinds of things, and at the end of the day, it is actually just like having fun and generating like hype and making memories. Kind of all we care about in our group. So it's kind of an advantage, I think, playing an old game sometimes.
Yeah, you guys have that kind of pool of old knowledge you can draw from, right? Everyone knows something that you don't know. I liked what you said though about not just the coaching, because I think coaching and having other people in your ear as you're playing is one of the fun things that I've experienced this year with fighting games. Like I've been learning a little bit of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which that game is. You want to talk about skill ceiling? That game is stupid. It's so hard, but I have a blast playing it, especially when there's people who are kind of talking to me as I'm in a match, and they're like, "Yo, you gotta like think about this, and you should try this combo, or remember what you practiced like before you were on." That stuff is super fun, right? And it's almost like you're in like a little street fight, and there's like the crowd around you that's like, "Yeah, get him!" Right? And that's what's fun about the experience. It's not about winning out, right? Standing over someone and being like, yeah, I'm better than you. That can only feel so good for so long, right? And if you want to kind of grow up and mature, that's not a perspective you should have on things. But I also love crew battles. Oh my god, any game, it's so much fun to watch crew battles. I watched one a while ago that was like America versus Japan in Third Strike. Just super cool and super fun to see all the hype and characters that come out of those things.
Yeah, totally. I mean, one of the things we always say in our group, or at least maybe it's just me who says it, I don't know. But I always say, like, no one remembers who wins this tournament or that tournament in a few years, but everybody remembers, like, the hype moments, like when you do something cool and gets excited for you, or when you see a player, like, play to their best ability and, like, go beyond what everyone expected in a tournament and that kind of. So that's like, I think that's what we're always trying to cultivate. There's like this, there's this thing with Third Strike. Once you start to understand how the parry system works, you get a certain level of control that you don't in other kinds of games. It's like if you know someone has a habit, they're going to do something, you can completely shut them down. Where in other fighting games, you have to find the right tool and it might not necessarily work and that kind of thing. And there's this moment I've watched because I've taught a decent handful of people this game where the first time they like parry something intentionally and then do like a strong punish, they like just like light up. They're like, "Oh my god!" And they like look at me like this new power I just discovered, and I'm like, "That's the power, right?"
Oh yeah.
And then usually from there, they're kind of hooked. Yeah.
That sound effect for the parry in Third Strike is like the dopest thing in video games. I swear, man, that game is so rad. Yeah. I mean, if you guys don't know it in chat or anything, the Daigo parry is like the most legendary fighting game moment ever. I think it's so cool.
I think
most
it's
people I've met. Sorry,
go ahead.
Oh, yeah, go. Yeah, I'm out. You guys go.
Okay.
Okay, I'll
Most people.
or-
Okay.
go ahead.
Jamie, why don't you?
What's the
Okay, quick
third
comment.
moment?
Most people that I've met who play Third Strike play it because they saw someone showed them that video, and then they started playing it.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, what I was
Sorry,
gonna
go
say
ahead,
was
Jamie.
just to add on to Kyle's points about how no one really cares too much about wins the tournament, but they care about the sick moments. Like the moment 37, the Daigo parry that everybody knows about. Daigo did not win that tournament.
Mhm.
Daigo, I think he got third that tournament, but like, does anyone really care? Like that moment's legendary. Everyone like it's like gone beyond esports. It's like it's a really really popular video. It defines Third Strike. So yeah, just to add on to that.
So when it comes to like hype moments and really like heated exchanges, or the things that we enjoy as competitors, what kind of moments do Splatoon players look forward to in their competitions?
One when you're playing the ranked modes in Splatoon, there is the chance of having overtime where your team isn't winning right now, but since you have the objective, you have the chance to overtake the other team in objective. So
Oh yeah,
if it's splat zones, like you're 10 points under the other team and you're in control, if you can maintain control for 11 seconds, you steal that win from them. And those moments are always so tense as both a player and a spectator and a TO that it's just like everyone gets so riled up. And to speak to what was said before about meeting in person, like when we had our LANs for Splatoon, like we are so rambunctious during those moments, and I feel really bad and grateful for our Sentry Box cards for letting us take over their basement and shout really loudly at TVs and other friends.
Yeah, what I think is fun about watching Splatoon as well is, say you have never seen the game at all, but you're watching a really hype moment, whether it's like a player like totally wiping the opponent field, or like an overtime steal where it's just like, wait, no, they should not have gotten that. How did they get that?
Yeah.
Like, if you are brand new to watching the game, I really do encourage you, like, watch the stream today. Every stream there is a handful of just really hype moments that want to like pound the table or cheer. There's one time even in a LAN, I don't know how many times actually we've had people disconnect from the LAN because somebody hit the table and the switch undocks just enough for it to lose its Ethernet connection.
Yep.
And like it happens a lot. So yeah, I really encourage, check out the stream later today. Clip some of those hype moments because there's going to be quite a few that will get your blood going.
Yeah, overtime is super super fun in that game.
Mhm.
There's like a lot of, I think the best moments in games are when you can say, "Oh my god, they just stole the win." You know what I mean? And some of that stuff with the objectives that's just great sports. That's just great stuff to watch. Like you said, accessible to even watch, right? That's kind of the beautiful thing about Splatoon, is that because it's a fun, accessible game, it's also fun and accessible to watch, right? It's easy to kind of grasp. It's easy to kind of get a perspective of who has the lead, who should be winning this, things like that, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in Splatoon that is, if you're a new player watching, there's a mode called Clam Blitz that you will figure out eventually. But if you try to explain the rules of Clam Blitz, collecting little clams, turning them into a big football power clam, throwing the clams at the clam basket, if any of that sounds interesting, once you get it, it makes sense. But the first time you watch Clam Blitz, it's the only one that's like, what on earth are they doing?
Yeah, Ryan, the first time I played that, I was so confused. But then when it clicks, you're like, oh my, this is like the best mode. This is like, I don't know, I get super hype about that because when you hit that dunk, you feel elated. You know what I mean?
It's a decentralization of the objective where you can create your own advantage anywhere on the map as long as you pick up enough clams, and that is a big shift in mentality from the other modes. And the community has a love-hate relationship with it, and I like it when I'm playing with friends, people I can chat with, but it's very extremely frustrating trying to coordinate with people within Splatoon's built-in system where all you can say is "booyah" or "this way." Like,
Yeah,
there's not enough tools to communicate that mode. And
I agree to a certain extent, only because I think it's funny to just spam "booyah" when you die, and that could mean like I hate this game, or it could mean like oh nice kill, or it could also just mean like I'm waiting to respawn. You know, it can mean whatever you want.
yeah,
Um,
having fun with the controls you're given, definitely a
Yeah.
good time.
but also, yeah, what is "booyah"? Nintendo, like what do you? Nintendo sometimes these guys they make games. I don't know why.
There's even
Yeah.
the weapon. There's the Booyah Bomb weapon that powers up the more people spam the Booyah button. So that is
Yeah.
actual legit strat is spamming the
know.
Booyah when
Oh, how
somebody's
dumb
got their Booyah Bomb.
It's so sweet. Okay, I wanted to get to this point for you guys in the Alberta Squid Swamp. We talked a little bit earlier with the Third Strike guys about self improvement through the game and how that's kind of inherent in the fighting games. What do you guys do or recommend people do if they like want to practice Splatoon and get better at Splatoon? Is there an equivalent to going into training mode in a fighting game and just spending a couple hours there, or is it more like free form practice?
I honestly think it depends on where you're starting at. For example, if you're a brand new player, you've never touched the game before, I encourage you actually just to play the single player campaign because if you like just fun Nintendo platformers like Mario Galaxy or like Mario 3D World, where it's just sort of a 3D world but with puzzle solving and platforming and some of the shooting mechanics, the single player mode teaches you how to like aim and move, and like it teaches you the core mechanics to kind of get started in with the game.
Mhm.
Once you feel confident in with that, I do. People always give me a hard time, but I always recommend playing in solo queue because there's a ranking system in Splatoon, like with a lot of other shooters, where the more wins you get as you accumulate, you go up and up in rank. And really, the highest you can get in that solo ranked mode is being ranked 1 in the world. So you have a ranking system that goes basically on
Pretty dope.
a letter system from C minus up to S plus and then X. And then once you hit X, you can start seeing where you place in the world against other players. So I think that's another really great way of learning the mechanics of the game, whether that's like map control, aiming, shooting, supporting another individual. But if you are an amazing, like even if you're like the top solo player in the world, you still need to be able to communicate and work with a team.
Mhm.
And so being able to find some people, like join our community, join any Splatoon community and find people that you want to play with, find some friends that you want to play with, and learn how to be a really good supportive team player. Like make good call outs. Oh, there's a player over in the left alley. Oh yeah, they almost have their special ready. Oh yeah, you're the last one up. Make sure you jump back or stay safe. Be that kind of person supporting your team. And I think if you've got some experience in the single player, if you've got some experience with solo, and then you've got some good experience as like working in with a team, that's sort of how you shape your overall skill set in Splatoon.
Yeah. I'd say I wholeheartedly agree with Yoko about the single player mode. Like that teaches so much about the mechanics, and I had a lot of fun with it too. I would definitely suggest that as well. And if you can't, I know it's not so accessible to everybody, but one thing I found for myself that was really handy was just streaming or recording your own footage and looking back at it to see, with a critical eye to be like, okay, in this match, I died, 10 times. I only got objective like this many times, and just look back and see how you did as an individual, and try and improve from there. And as Yoko said before, like your team, because that's where the magic happens as in a team-based game. What do you know?
Yeah, like the kill ratio, when you look at how many kills you got, don't focus on how many kills you got. Focus on how many times you died. If you got a ton of kills, but you died way more and your team still lost, like you didn't have enough momentum to keep the objective going, Try playing that game where maybe you get a few less kills, maybe you get a few less trades, but you stay alive a lot longer, because the longer you're up, the more paint control you can have on the map. So that's definitely really a good thing I always recommend for new players, is focus on staying alive more than trying to take others down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a general team game tip too for all you guys listening. Practice like just being positive when you play games, and you'll do better in every team game. You know, just come into it thinking, okay, that's okay. Okay, we lost. That's okay. You know, next time. And you will get better at team games for sure. For Third Strike, what's your guys' processes for the lab? You know, do you guys do like group streams where you watch each other lab and stuff, or is it more of like a practice on your own and show up to the game day kind of thing?
Oh, we're always talking about everything all the time. I think we're posting replays and asking questions. I mean, we have a lot of players that know a lot about the game, so that's easy. But I mean, again, like, it's an old game, so there's a ton of videos, a ton of resources out there already kind of set up, right? So yeah, no, it's very, I think, communal. Like, even, you know, myself and a few other of like the elder players, we've been learning side characters, you know, for fun, but also so that we can like learn alongside new players and that kind of thing. So I'm in there asking questions all the time about stuff. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Jamie?
Yeah, it's a lot of the older players teaching the newer players. And like, we try to be very proactive about it, like reaching out to the younger players, knowing, like, making sure that they know that they're a welcome part of the community and that we want them to learn and we're excited for them to learn. But it's also like recognizing that being good isn't really what matters. It's about like being able to enjoy. And I think the more skills you learn, the more fun the game gets. So they do kind of go hand in hand.
Totally.
Good feedback.
And we really, I feel like we really do cultivate players. Like, that's, I think, our focus in a lot of ways, to be honest. I do, like, all of us will post clips, but I'll make compilation videos and I show every player, like, showing off doing something cool.
That's sweet.
Yeah, we have a player. He's only been playing fighting games for 10 months, named Weatherman, and he's pretty incredible for how long he's been playing.
Shouts out to Weatherman.
Generates, like, yeah, Weatherman. And this kid is just making clips all the time. So I'm probably gonna make like a tribute to his 1 year Third Strike birthday or something like that. But yeah, I mean, all of our players are like showing. I mean, I remember Animathon. The only thing anyone remembers about Animathon was like our like kind of newish player Danny getting third place and just tearing through the bracket. Like, so that's what we love. We love growth. We love that kind of thing.
Yeah. Victor said, talk about the Jamie percentage. What is the Jamie percentage?
It's kind of a running joke. So yeah, I'm kind of newish to Third Strike. Let's say like I've been playing for about a year or so, somewhere around there. So the Jamie percent is kind of just a bit that we started running, and it's just it's a speed run for how fast they can take a round off of me. So the record for a long time was actually held. It was held by Kwa, playing one of his secondaries. He perfected me in 9 seconds, and Kyle recently took the speed run at 8 seconds. So it's a very competitive speed run, seeing how fast everyone can body me.
What you got to do is you got to take side bets and start throwing some of these matchups. Like, yeah, you want the new Jamie percentage? Throw a couple bucks my way, and you know you can have it.
Split the bounty.
Yeah, the bounty
under the table.
I think we're gonna make like a speed run list and have an 80% for every player.
You have like an official
speedrunners.net.
Yeah,
nice.
Next good game, Jamie, you're gonna be the highlight.
Yeah. Working on it.
That's goofy, man. I'm glad there's no tie percentage. I think it would be faster than 8 seconds for me. So Jamie kind of alluded to this earlier in the Twitch chat. I didn't really want to talk about this. I was actually going to invite ASS on the podcast way back when this was going on, but I'm really curious what you guys thought about the hashtag free melee situation that happened within the bigger Splatoon community. You guys probably know about the situation better than me, so maybe Ryan or Andrew, do you want to explain a bit about what hashtag free melee is?
Yeah, absolutely. I can just give some context to the whole situation. Basically, to make a very simplified version of a long story, Nintendo, I'm assuming a lot of people saw Nintendo put some takedowns for some Melee tournaments. I think it was the Big House, because of copyright infringement. They didn't want them having a Melee tournament using whatever online methods they were working with for that. And so that basically shut down that tournament. And a lot of people in the Smash community started this Free Melee hashtag movement to put pressure on Nintendo to have them be more engaged with these kind of competitive events. And so Nintendo hosts their own Splatoon tournaments. And so these are tournaments open to anyone in the world. You can like sign up and join. And they had a tournament. Yeah, it was, oh gosh, I feel like it was a couple months ago. And
yeah, but like half a year or something like that.
Yeah, it was a little bit ago, but still not, it was within our COVID times here. And basically what happened is Nintendo hosted that to all the teams. It got to the top bracket. And on the Sunday of the top bracket, all of the teams had changed their team name to some form of Free Melee. And so
Almost
Nintendo, Nintendo made the choice. Normally, like Nintendo streams all of their tournaments.
Right.
Nintendo made the choice not to stream the tournament so that they wouldn't have this public face image of like casters saying, "Oh, Team Free Melee is going against Team Save Melee in this."
Then it would almost be like Nintendo endorsed protests against Nintendo, right?
Exactly. So Nintendo, they didn't cancel the finals, but what they did is they chose not to air the finals. Now, we talked earlier about how all of the top Splatoon players, like it's a pretty tight-knit community and everybody knows everybody. So all of the top players know each other, and all of the top players also know the tournament organizers. So the tournament organizers got together to make their own tournament featuring all of the top teams that were in Nintendo's tournament. All of the top teams that were in Nintendo's tournament dropped out of the tournament on the Sunday. So they didn't even play the finals that Nintendo was hosting.
So Nintendo's tournament was just essentially gone because there's no one to play it.
It crumbled.
And then, and just so you know, the prize for winning like Nintendo's tournament is like each player gets a copy of like Mario Tennis or something like that on Switch.
Dude, Nintendo notorious for having no prize pools for their games.
Yeah.
Like some of their Smash tournaments before is like, you get a controller if you win. You know?
Exactly. So I'm going to shout out the team from Endgame TV because they do an amazing job at tournament hosting and production. And so everyone on their team basically made a tournament within hours with like full media graphics. Like it was a really, really polished production. And all of the top teams from Nintendo's tournament ended up entering that like pre-made tournament from Endgame TV that was basically, this is Nintendo's tournament, but not run by Nintendo. So it had all the same top teams playing in it.
And I think they raised like $2,000 some odd, didn't they? Or was it more than that?
Oh, it was more than that.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but I want to say it was like, I don't know, $20,000 or something like that. Like it was
ridiculous.
It was insane. Matt in the chat there is saying 30,000. So yeah, they raised so much money because all the people from Melee basically heard what the Splatoon community was doing.
What they were up to in support.
Yeah, they wanted to support.
Yeah.
So basically, it ended up with a huge prize pool. I think a ton of money got donated to charity as well.
Yeah.
But like everyone on who played and like won in that tournament took home individually like hundreds or thousands of dollars in prize support rather than just getting like the eShop download of Mario Tennis. And also it just created just this overall awareness and this hype for the Splatoon community. So yeah, that was that was a really interesting moment to kind of
Yeah,
watch and
was-
follow.
It was really cool to see the Splatoon community get all the headlines, for a week, because they really did something and took a stand in a way where no one else was, and I thought it was pretty badass, just to put it frankly.
Yeah, I wish it
how-
hadn't
how
come to that, but yeah.
Yeah, how are you guys feeling when all that was happening and Splatoon is really popping off in the news cycle?
It was cool to see. I'm not gonna lie, like seeing the community come together to kind of, I hesitate to say this, but do a better job than Nintendo at their own game. It was cool to see, but I mean, the underlying issue is that Nintendo doesn't really support its competitive scenes as well as they could, and I understand protecting your IP and things like that, but it's if you want to have people playing your game, you need to support the communities, especially for the hardcore community who's been so dedicated and so consistently in support of you and your game and your products that like it just sends bad vibes around if they feel supported or loved and their favorite tournament gets turned down. So I'm glad that Splatoon community came out to help with that, but I just wish it hadn't had to be a situation in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I have to say as well, like Nintendo needs to have, whether they're making these decisions rightly or wrongly, Nintendo needs to have communication with their player base. And the fact that these communities are so tight knit and people know each other, like it just goes to show that you can't go in with no community connection and just say, yep, we're shutting this down, no reason, full stop, and then be done with it. Like Nintendo really needs to have somebody who can work with the community and to be able to help communicate like, hey, we can't do this, we can do this. And to almost be a liaison, because as it is right now, there's the only way that fans have to communicate with Nintendo is literally playing in a Nintendo run tournament and changing your team name to the thing you want to communicate. Like we should be able to send an email. Like we should be able to go into the Nintendo official Discord and at the tournament organizer who is planning and organizing this and have a dialogue, right? And so what I think this whole movement is about is really trying to create a dialogue rather than having a one-way street for communication. Communities is all about listening to your player base and creating an enjoyable experience for everyone. And to see that come into a bigger conversation, I think is really important about communities on the larger scale,
Yeah. So what do you think about that, Jamie and Kyle, coming from
Yeah,
a game that doesn't have any official support anymore? Or
actually, I'd really love to take on this question because I come from the Melee community. I've been entering Melee and Brawl tournaments for 11, almost 12 years now, I think.
Wow.
Like I have a very long storied history in the Smash community. And I think Nintendo blocking competitive Smash is probably one of the saddest stories in esports overall. Because I think Smash for a long time has had incredible potential to become one of the biggest games. Like you go to Animathon and Smash is like one of the most popular tournaments always, regardless of anything, because it's so
You go to
accessible
and
and
it's one of the biggest,
Oh yeah,
it's
very much
always
so.
the biggest. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's there's so many casual players entering too. Like it's just so accessible. It's such a good format for an easy game to get into, and like in recent, well, like for the longest time, Nintendo has. It's not even about supporting Smash, but they've blocked opportunities.
Yeah.
Like I know Ninja, like from Fortnite, had a huge thing, a huge gig planned with the Smash community, and Nintendo blocked that. And there's been all these other opportunities that Nintendo has blocked, like Evo. When Brawl, Super Smash Bros. Brawl got into Evo, they blocked the streaming rights. We didn't have a stream, and instead we had a text chat where there was like a stream of text, and they would say the results and like what was happening in
like
each
live
match.
tweeted
Came with a two-stock comeback, but it's just text, and we're just like, well, this
OMG
sucks.
forward smash.
Yeah, and then the
Wow.
Melee community, we raised like $100,000 for some charity, and Nintendo tried to block us from running the event. It's just like these incredibly out of touch decisions. Like there's no logic. It's just the Nintendo law team just has like a very black and white view of copyright infringement, or if it's their property, they just don't want any liability whatsoever. There's no like room for communication or anything. It's so incredibly out of touch. And I think if that wasn't the case, then Smash might be one of the bigger esports alive, just because of what I was mentioning before. It's just so accessible. It's so, I mean, it's got Nintendo characters. Like there's a lot to love for everybody, especially the older games. Like it sucks so much that Melee hasn't been updated to a newer console. Because before the age of Slippy, when we got rollback netcode from an independent developer, like playing Melee is so difficult. You got to have the big tube TVs that are just so hard to lug around, and like running a tournament, the logistics are a nightmare. Like Nintendo has just made it so difficult for us. And like for what? We've done nothing but support them. It's just so incredibly sad.
Yeah.
And again, it's just like the lack of communication on that, because maybe in some world there is justification for what they're trying to do, but you don't know it. And it's just like, nope, you can't do this. But why? Because we said so. Like, you need to be able to at least put that why out, to give some justification behind these like ridiculous actions, like trying to shut down tournaments and shut down charities. Like, what is your motive?
The charities ones are very strange too.
Yeah. That is baffling, and it's all up to speculation at that point of like, people can throw their theories about why they did it, but no one knows, because as Yoko said, no communication. So it's really sad.
Does Capcom still support Third Strike events? Like, do you guys know about that at all? Because I feel like Capcom is one of those companies where like they honor their old properties. They don't really hold them and protect them as much. I don't think they do. Maybe not to the extent that Nintendo might.
I mean, they definitely don't block anything. I think there was what was the anniversary? 30th anniversary of Street Fighter Edition? Yeah. They held tournaments. I think it was like all over the world for like all the old games that 30th. Mm-hmm. And then they chose like each of those locations to have like a giant prize pool for, like, I think Third Strike was actually Canada, and then Street Fighter 2 was somewhere else or something like that. So that came out of the blue. They'll support randomly like that, but they're not like actively trying to support, but they're not blocking either.
Yeah. So. Well, Capcom's been known to be good developers or good supporters of their communities, in that they'll throw some money at tournaments at least. They'll throw their name behind something and be like, oh yeah, you guys are, Evo's doing something. Okay, Capcom's on board, right? Whereas, like you mentioned, Jamie, Melee's not at Evo, or wasn't supposed to be at Evo this year, I think, right? They just wanted Ultimate. And that's really weird, because the Melee community is like just as just as active, right, as the modern Smash Ultimate game.
Yeah, and just to draw a parallel between Capcom and Nintendo, for Third Strike, we're in a very similar situation in the pandemic to Melee right now. So we're both playing on freeware. So for Street Fighter Third Strike, we're playing on Fightcade 2, which is an arcade emulator. And then for Melee, they're playing on the Slippy emulator, which gives the rollback netcode for Melee. And Nintendo is the one that was trying to shut down the Slippy tournaments. And I'm not a lawyer. I can't give legal advice, obviously, but like, as far as I understand, that the use of an emulator is legal as long as you own the actual game. And so Nintendo can't prove that everyone doesn't own the game, but they're legal. Like, their pockets just run so deep that it doesn't matter at all. Like, there's no way that any tournament organizer could ever handle that. So at the very least, Capcom isn't doing that, which I can appreciate coming from the Melee community. We're not getting constantly blocked by our developer, even if there isn't too much support. Around. Yeah.
So kind of talking about games being older and stuff like that, and also to kind of switch gears off of how depressing it might be to see a game you love be stomped on a bit. What's the Street Fighter 3 meta look like? I know every fighting game has their like top tiers and stuff like that. Has it changed very much in recent years, as far as you guys know? Because I know people are still playing the game a ton and still coming up with new things, or is it kind of locked in for the meta? And I want to get to the Splatoon meta too, because I got no clue what that's like. But just for Third Strike at the moment, what's it like out there if you want to kind of get on the trend?
Okay.
I mean, there's a pretty clear tier list, which mostly applies to the highest level. I think that, I would call our level an intermediate level. The tier list is probably a little bit different, but I mean, the skill ceiling is so high that it's kind of hard to make sense of it because, you can take a character that's considered low tier or mid tier, and there are specialists, some like famous Japanese player who's been playing them for 20 years, and they can just destroy everybody with this character. But then you have because Chun-Li's like notorious, right? Chun-Li is like the character in Third Strike. But the best Chun-Li's in the world are like the best, like they're way better players than sort of everyone else who's facing them. So it's like the tier list is like, it's very strange to sort of make sense of it. And basically it's got to the point now, in my opinion, where you can play whoever you want, especially at an intermediate level, as long as you pretty much don't play Sean. I think that's kind of what it is.
Or 12, yeah. There's a few
Yeah, or
characters
12.
that are borderline unplayable.
Yeah. I mean,
I
the
think,
thing about Third Strike is a lot of the characters are like, even like the mid tiers are incredibly potent. Like they can speedrun you in 8 seconds. It's
You just have to throw it in.
like every character is just like explosive, except for like kind of the bottom two. And so yeah, it kind of doesn't matter to a degree. Some matchups are harder than others, though. Of course, it's a fighting game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think talking about the metagame outside of tier lists, Third Strike is kind of different. It's very different from all the other Street Fighter games just because of the parry mechanic. And just with the parry mechanic, it changes the way that we think about matchups so heavily. Because Third Strike, relative to other Street Fighter games, the matchups matter so much less so. Because if you have the personal read on the other player, it doesn't matter what character they are. Because no matter what, you can just parry and destroy them. Like
That's
if you know what the other person's gonna do, nothing else matters. You can just play versus the player, and then the character matchup stops mattering.
Man,
So that's one of the
Yeah,
super
totally.
awesome things
so
about
cool. Man.
Third
Third Strike
Strike.
is so sick.
The parry
Yeah,
mechanic is sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, there's just so much.
based on that, Sorry, I'm out.
There's just so much room to express yourself, and like there's so many ways that you can play. Like even with one character, you can be a very aggressive in your face, or you can also play a zoning style, and you can pretty much make anything work. You can really express yourself just because parrying. There's just so much that you can do.
hmm
There's I think that's like a perfect way actually to talk about it, Jamie. There's a lot of freedom in that game. If you're playing character A and your character B doesn't have like the right button to counter their button or whatever, like Jamie said, then if you know they're going to just do the same frame trap over and over again, and that's their crutch, you just parry it, and then you're fine, right? And then that gets into their head, and there's all these like weird meta levels that evolve around, especially two players who are really good at parrying. You'll see they play really like kind of strangely against each other. They're kind of playing offbeat, and they're constantly trying to like bait each other and feel each other out, and they maybe won't throw a poke for a really long time because they're both just sort of feeling the spacing. And this is kind of a thing that happens for a lot of new players. If you come from other grounded Street Fighter games or any fighting game that's grounded, you're used to the anti-air just always working, right? Someone jumps, what an idiot, this guy jumped, right? But in Third Strike, if you know the anti-air they're going to use and the timing that they're going to use it, you can hopefully parry. You're still putting yourself at a disadvantage jumping in the air, but Third Strike, you have all this freedom to move around because of the parry. So it's not, you'll still have those footsie grounded matches between some players, 1 to 10 seconds left. But you'll have those 8-second matches. You'll have matches where people are just flying around the screen, and there's also a super jump in that game. You can jump a lot farther than you want if you feel like it. So it's like very aggressive and flexible and explosive, and it's really easy to see. If I watch like a high level player, and they're Ken, and there's like whatever a million famous Kens, you can usually tell who they are in the first couple seconds by their play style. Like Jamie was saying, like you can really express yourself by the way you move in that game.
That is so cool. I love games that give you that personality, that room to be yourself and explore your own play style. Game is dope. I can only say it so many times.
Yeah.
So what's to kind of switch gears again? What is the meta in Splatoon? Is there certain weapons that are like way better for certain different scenarios, and how do you kind of figure that out in terms of like what scenario or what objective you're trying to play?
So when Splatoon was first coming out, like I think about the first 2 years of its development or its release,
Mhm.
there was constant patches in its development where either new weapons were coming out, new maps were coming out, or other weapons were getting like buffs or nerfs to them. And so there was a very dynamic meta of weapons that were really strong, or that you'd see a lot of team comps favoring a certain set of specials because of like their ability. Like the inkjet used to be like super top tier, and then it got a nerf, and then nobody was playing inkjet weapons anymore, and then it got a buff, and then everyone's playing inkjet weapons again. And so now the game occasionally will get some minor updates, but essentially the game is fully developed. So all of the balance patches have been applied, and what we see is a couple of things. Number one, I should say, there is no like truly bad weapon. It just is going to depend, again, a lot like how you're talking about how a good character or a bad character in good hands can do a lot better than a good character in bad hands or whatnot, you know? So like likewise with weapons, there's going to be weapons that see play and they're not amazing weapons, but they still are able to hold their own with a good player behind the weapon. But yeah, you do see, I think what's more important is team compositions. So if you know you have a really strong backliner, how are you going to be able to like build a team comp that works around that backliner? Or maybe your team is like super full of aggressive frontline players. How are then you going to build like your weapon set to support like their aggressive play style? So I think seeing team dynamics, and then lastly is like responding to your opponent's team. So we play our tournaments in a counter pick format, and maybe Andrew, you can talk a little bit about how counter pick works and how that helps create and shape a bit of a meta as well.
Yeah, so the counter pick format is we start the tournaments off with one map and one mode, and then the team that loses that match gets to pick the next map and mode going forward, as long as they don't do an exact repeat of the match before it.
Okay.
So what that allows you to do as a team is to look at how you did against that team in that last match, figure out what your strengths are and how you want to combat them, and you get to strategically pick a map and mode that is both, hopefully disadvantageous to the other team, good for you, and also a map that works well, or a mode that works well for you as well. So you can really, that tournament format is great because it usually means we get a lot of match 5 or match 7s that way, and you just get a lot of really nice moments.
Yeah.
And once again, you can, as Yoko was saying, you can find out which strategy you want to go for and build your entire team composition off of that. So
yeah, and because there's different modes, you might find like certain compositions work really well for like a splat zones mode where you're trying to get the most map control possible. Maybe you want to have a lot of like rain that's just going to put down ink everywhere, and you want to run a lot of booyah bombs that can instantly cap the zone and like secure it for you.
Yeah.
But on something like maybe tower control, maybe you want to have weapons that are more focused on like having armor so people can stay alive while they're on the tower, or having a stingray that you can immediately stop somebody on the tower by targeting it with that stingray. So you'll see across different modes as well, there's almost this like rock, paper, scissors dynamic of trying to get something that's going to be strong for you, that's also going to be something that dampers the opponent's strengths as well. And so you see that if you're doing a counter pick format, not only in picking the right maps, but also changing up your weapons as well. For example, armor is a very common sub or a special where people will want to like equip themselves with an armor that gives them extra hits. So if you see your opponents are doing that regularly, they're running armor strats, then you can run a power-up item that gives you the ability to like shred through armor easier.
Yeah.
And so you start doing that, and then the next game they stop running their armor, and now they've got this power up that's not really giving them much advantage against a team that doesn't have armor. So there can kind of be that like rock, paper, scissors dynamic as well, where there's not one set of weapons or one set of strategies that runs and wins every game, but you have to really be receptive to what your opponents are doing, what the map is, what the mode is, and all of these changing dynamic elements of the game so that your meta is always changing and dynamic.
Yeah, in that way, it does sound a lot like you have to have that shooter game sense, right? Being aware of what scenario you're going to be put in and how to deal with that scenario, not only the best, but also counter what the other guys are trying to do to you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly that.
There's nothing better in shooters than stomping the other guy's plans. And I like the counter pick. It's similar to like a Smash Bros counter pick scenario. That is kind of an understood, if that makes sense. Misunderstood, I guess is the word. Thing about some of these games is that's where some of the team or player personalities come out and player styles come out. It's not just how they play, but how they pick and ban certain scenarios or maps, right?
Yeah,
So we got
talked
10...
earlier. Oh, okay,
oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say we talked earlier about how divisive Clan Blitz that mode can be, and members in our community, they kind of know each other well enough to know who likes Clan Blitz, who doesn't, and we see that often in counter picks where it's like, okay, this is the team of memers. They're going to pick Clan Blitz against these people who absolutely hate it, and they may not win, but they're going to have a good time doing it.
And hey,
it's not about how well you win. It's about how much pain and suffering you can expose on your opponents, right?
Yeah, man. Getting people off their A game is just as important as beating them man on man, right?
Yep.
I got a friend who, when we play shooters, he'll just spam all chat like, "Oh yeah," well, when we're playing Valorant, for example. "Oh yeah, you have to defuse the bomb so it doesn't blow up and we win the round, right? You have to do that." Just to get them to be like, "Well, obviously," and then they're gonna kind of try and hunt them down and play a little looser, right? So it's about the mind games just as much as it is playing the game. But we have 10 minutes left, so I got one more question before we can plug your guys' communities and Twitters and all that. Splatoon guys, would you ever try out Third Strike? Would you ever jump in, play some Street Fighter 3 Third Strike?
I mean, if we were in person in Salt Flats events, absolutely. Just because, like, once again, you guys mentioned it before, like, your live events gather so much hype, and I've seen the crowds and the cheering driven by that, and it looks like a lot of fun. So I'd give it a shot, but it'd be that great because fighting games aren't typically my genre. But I mean, I'd give everything a try at least once.
I am absolutely the worst at Street Fighter. Like, anytime I've tried playing like Street Fighter 2, like the
everyone
classics,
who does play it first, I swear.
I'm just like so bad. So, for me, I always like being able to play at my competitive best in any game that I pick up. So I would need like a lot of coaching and help and advice and training. Like, I need that like the Punch Out Doc training montage for me to get to that level where I'd feel really good being able to go into a community and pick up that game.
And same goes for you guys. Oh, sorry, Jamie, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna answer the question too. Yeah, I think for me, when we were at the last Salt Flats, when I was with my my Melee Smash Brothers Melee carpool of friends, we saw this Splatoon community having so much fun, and we were just so jealous. They looked like they were just like such a tight knit community, so diverse too, and they're just having a really good time. We're like, damn, we need to make our own team. And then half of us don't own Switches, so it's kind of tough to get into. But again, just like Andrew was saying, I would love to try it at another Salt Flats tournament, because I know they'll always show up there, right?
Oh yeah.
Hey, Salt Mines later this year. Make a team.
Oh yeah.
How about you, Kyle? You ever think Splatoon might be in your wheelhouse?
I mean, like I said earlier, this is the first time I've been kind of exposed to it. But it sounds like it's a lot of fun. And it sounds like it's a great community, and that's really all that matters at the end of the day. So it sounds like, I'd totally try it.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. I hope you guys had as much fun as I did talking to you. do you guys want to tell people where they can learn some Third Strike?
Yeah, so we have a Facebook group called Third Strike Academy. And then, of course, we have a Discord group called Third Strike Academy as well. So you should be able to get in touch with us through either Jamie or I, or through the Facebook or something like that.
Probably through my Twitter. Can I drop my Twitter in the Twitch chat? Is that how the Twitch chat works? Can I drop links or no?
I don't think you can drop links, but if you send it to me in Discord, I'll pop it in there.
Okay, I'll message you right now.
Yeah, and
I
where can
think the
people
mantra
find-
of this game is.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I think the mantra of Third Strike players across the world always say is play Third Strike. It's a good game.
Yeah, Third Strike is dope. You guys heard it here first.
And just to add on to that, yeah, so we like briefly mentioned it earlier, but I run a Third Strike league where everyone gets matched up with another player, and you have just one set to play that week. So it's like relatively low commitment. You get lots of time to prepare for that one set, or not prepare if you're busy with other things. Like it's a very low commitment, and you just can get matched up with people each week, and it's been really, really fun for us. And then at the end of the season, you get we run a tournament with prizes, stickers, posters, sometimes some cash, and it's been lots of fun.
Yeah,
Nice.
We'll teach you how to parry stuff and get dopamine flowing in your blood.
So for Splatoon, where can people track down the Alberta Squid Swamp?
So the easiest way to find all the Alberta Squid Swamp social and information is just on albertasquidswamp.com. And so I think in the chat there, the link's being posted, but you can also do !squid in the chat to grab our website there. And that will link you to our Discord page. The Discord is where all of the communication happens. So if you want to be in the games, if you want to be pinging somebody saying like, hey, how do I do this? Is somebody free for a game right now? The Discord's where you want to be. And then also we have our Twitter, of course, at Alberta Squid Swamp, and then our Twitch page, which will be streaming our bracket at 3 p.m. today. And that is, again, Alberta Squid Swamp on Twitch. So very easy to follow. Do not listen to anyone in the chat saying just type in our...
Type in ass into Google. Should be the first hit. It won't be. Don't do that. Don't do that. Okay, well, thank you. Thanks again, guys. Thanks so much. Everyone, thanks for joining us. Thanks for hanging out. And make sure you stay tuned. Keep your eyes open for more AESA Insight, the podcast with no schedule. When will it drop next? Who knows? But yeah, let's sign off. See you guys.
Thanks for